Hello, and welcome to the True Crime Lounge. This is the second episode of our mini-series, I Survived. This is a sub-podcast to True Crime Lounge, where you can find me on Spotify and YouTube. Um, there is also a mini-series that I am doing as well. This is, like I said, this is also a mini-series I am doing as well, and you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter to keep up with updates on my channel, podcast, and merch shop. Speaking of merch shop, you can go check that out as well. Help a girl out. Um, but if you recall, on the first episode of this mini series, we talked about the case of Colleen Stan. For the second episode of this mini series, I'm going to be discussing the case of Kara Robinson. Now, grab your drink of choice, and we're gonna dive on into the case of Miss Kara Robinson and how she survived her kidnapper. And I know that I typically talk a lot about the perpetrators. However, since on this mini-series, I am going to be focusing on the survivors of the kidnapping. You might remember the movie, um, The Girl Who Escaped the Kara Robinson story. Lifetime actually did this movie, and this is how I actually came across this case. So, once I figured out it was actually based on a true story, I actually had to go look it up, and come, I actually had to go do my research on this case. So, this is how I came across this case. But we know that this case happened June 24th, 2009, when she was only 15, and she was kidnapped by a 38-year-old serial killer, Richard Evans. Little is known about her early life apart from the kidnapping. Her kidnapper would go on to commit suicide before the authorities would go on to find him. Um, so basically, what happened is she was at a friend's house watering plants and bushes at the in the front yard of her friend's house in West Columbia, South Carolina. A Pontiac Trans Am pulled into the driveway. A man in his thirties got out of his car and was wearing jeans, a button-down shirt, and a baseball cap. Try to make it like I don't look dangerous at all. So he had offered Kara some pamphlets, and the man would go on and ask her if her parents were home. She responded with, "No, this is not my house. This is my friend's house." So he said, "Okay, well, what about her parents? Are they home?" Yeah, trying to be all friendly, but we all know what's about to happen. And she would respond with, "No, her mom is not home right now." So the next things to happen would go on to be a nightmare for Kira. The man who will later be identified as Richard Evans, pulled out a gun and pressed it to Kara's neck, focused it into forced her into a large storage bin that was stowed away in the back seat. After 18 hours before 6 o'clock p.m., when her kidnapper was sleeping, she escaped, ran so fast that she could run as fast as she could to a car that was parked in the to a car parked in the basement where she would ask for help. She would run to the police station before taking them to her kidnapper's house. Now, this was not the first time that Evans pulled something like this. His first act was in September of '96 when 16-year-old Sophia Silva disappeared from her front porch in Spotsylvania County. Her body would appear 5 weeks later King in King County, King George County Creek. His next act would occur May 1997 with a 15-year-old Kristen Lisk and her 12-year-old sister Katie vanished from their front yard, also in Spotsylvania. Their bodies will be found 5 days in the South Anna River. These murders will remain unsolved until 2002. Getting think there he has a connection with the number 5. That's just shooting that out there. Um, so in 2002, evidence would abduct and rape Kara in South Carolina. After she escaped him while sleeping, he fled and committed suicide while surrounded by police in Florida. So he basically knew he was caught. There was no way out of it. Instead of facing justice, he committed suicide. He will later be identified as the Les Silver Killer. Now, I could honestly do a whole video on him with more details about who he is. However, I plan on doing that in the future, but for purposes of this video and this episode, I'm going to focus on Kara's case only. Now that we have a little background of knowing that this was not Evan's first time, let's jump back to Kara. She would spend 18 hours of torture at the hands of her attacker before she escaped. She had previously kidnapped and killed 3 girls in Virginia. He had previously kidnapped and killed 3 girls in Virginia, so we know he was planning, after he kidnapped her, he was planning on killing her. Um, so he was probably intending to kill her friend. I'm just shooting that part out there as well. But he had the same pattern, and it would have been ultimately been Kara's fate if she had not escaped him. When she escaped him, this put him in the police radar, which led to him killing himself. Her fight or flight kept her through this torture. This would help her in gathering and identifying information. 1. She was forced inside a large storage bin in the back seat. He drove toward his apartment, and she began counting the turns he made. She did this in hopes that later finding her way home again. She remembered details such as listening to classic rock station and him smoking Marlboro Red cigarettes. She would memorize the serial number on the inside of this plastic container that he had forced her to kneel inside. She would also go on to say that her survival mechanism told her to gather as much information as possible. She would also say that her fear barely kicked in and the human will to survive and the survival mechanism really just can be underestimated. So basically, on his way back to the apartment, he pulled over, restrained her with handcuffs, with a gag in her mouth. He then took her to his cluttered apartment, also found a guinea pig, a lizard, and other small animals, and assaulted her for 18 hours. Despite being terrorized, she tried to find ways to identify him. The name of his doctor and dentist were on the fridge, and he tried and the fridge. Also, and to try to keep him calm. When he wanted to have some food, he said, "Well, I'm not going to eat right now. But if there is anything I can do for you," she says. I actually ended up sweeping his kitchen. So, in the dawn hours, while he was asleep, she was able to free one of her hands from the handcuffs, which was attached to a bed frame. Despite a circular clamp by a screw connected to a rope with her teeth and unclipped a leg restraint with her attached to the foot of the bed, she quietly tiptoed to the front door and, trying to make as little sound as possible, unbolted the two locks. She would go on to tell people, I knew he had a gun beside him, and he's going to see me running, and he's going to shoot me in the back. That's all I could think. And I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter because I'm out, and at least someone will be able to find him. My body was scared, but my brain was like, okay, we're just about our business. We're doing this. So, she made her escape, ran toward a car in the parking lot, flagged two men down, who took her to the police station where she recounted the ordeal. She she was asked by her officers to take them back to his apartment, and because of her keen powers and observation, and the help of the apartment's maintenance man, They found his lair. By the time authorities arrived at his apartment, he had fled. Inside his apartment, police found a locked footlocker with newspaper clippings and unsolved murder of three girls, Sophia Silver and sisters Katie and Kristen Lisk. They all had gone missing in Spotsylvania County, Virginia, more than 5 years before Kira's abduction. So, the Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott would tell people in 2022 that I don't care how tough you are as a cop, when you see something like that, it grabs you. At this point, bells really went off in my head that we just didn't have a kidnapping of Kira Robinson. This was something else. This was actually a serial killer. So, a little backstory, shall we? Sophia Silver was 16 when she disappeared from her front step in Loriella Park, a neighborhood in Spotsylvania, September 9th, 1996. Her remains was found a month later in a creek. Then, May 1st, 1997, Kristen, 15, and Katie, 12, but the Lisk sisters, were found were abducted from home and found 5 days later in the South Anna River. The murders went cold until the abduction of Kara ramped up the investigation. Forensic evidence found at the crime scenes later matched evidence found in Evan's home. Police also found two of Kristen's fingerprints from the inside of Evan's trunk. So, the police tracked him to Sarasota, Florida on June 27, 2002, in a high speed chase, and ended up when he ran spikes on the highway and was attacked by a police dog. Evans then shot himself. So, in August of 2002, Spotsylvania County Sheriff Ronald Knight announced that Evans was responsible for the crimes in his jurisdiction. We have experienced these crimes, and they were overwhelmed our community in a sense of grief, fear, and uncertainty, much of which still lingers today. He would go on to tell the Washington Post. So, for her help in solving the murders of Sophia and the Lisk sisters, Carrie received $150,000 worth of money and was able to meet their families. Wow, that's just amazing right there. I'm gonna take a pause right there and say, I can't imagine like going through what Kira went through. Like, I honestly don't know what my fight or flight would have done. Honestly, but Kira would go on to tell people that it was one of the most important things that could have happened to me because it brought home the importance of what I did because I felt like, wow, I've actually given these families something that they would have never gotten through without me. Just the closure of knowing the person responsible for their daughter's death is no longer here. So, in 2019, after participating in an interview with kidnapping survivors Elizabeth Smart, Kara took a part of the 20-minute lifetime special, Smart Justice: The Jamie Closs Case, in which 5 other survivors, Lynn was go on to support Closs, a Wisconsin teen who escaped her captor in 2019. I sat down on the couch with Elizabeth and 5 other women who have survived kidnappings and sexual assaults. And that was the moment I realized that I had a bigger purpose. I knew that I could find a reason for what had happened so that I could help other people. She would even go and say that she healed on the couch sitting and talking to these women in a way that she didn't even realize she was hurting. Just to sit down and talk with these women who understood their heart as what she had been through. And I will say this, like, especially when someone who's been sexually abused and assaulted, finding people, it's easy to say you get it when you've been on the outside looking at it, but sometimes when you find that person who's been through that, it's easier to connect with them and discuss it and make your way heal. I will honestly say that. Um, but Smart would inspire Kira, an advocate for trauma survivors, to continue to speak out. The two women teamed up and worked on a documentary that could do her own story justice. The final product was called Escaping Captivity: Kira Robinson's Story, and it premiered on Oxygen. I actually remember coming across this year later after it came out, and this was detailing how Nell Chamberlain not only outsmarted her captor, but used her remarkable memory to help police track him down in his reign of terror. She would go on to say, I also want to say, Elizabeth Smart would go on to say this, I also want everyone to have a sense of hope, because no one gets through this life without their fair share of struggle and trial. And I know Kara's story really just brings the ultimate sense of hope. Smart told Oxygen about the documentary. And she would also go on to say, I'm proud of Kara. I'm proud of everything she is doing. Kara's story has recently been made into a Lifetime movie. As I said earlier, it is The Girl Who Escaped, the Kara Robinson story, if you want to go back and check it. The movie stars the Katie Douglas as Kara. You might know Katie from Ginny and Georgia. Um, if you or someone you know has been sexually assaulted, please contact the National Sexual Assault Hotline. I will provide a link to that number at the end for you guys to go check out. Also, you can also go check out my merch shop where I do have shirts in that particular color. Or if you buy that shirt, it goes to that cause. It is on Bonfire. There should be a link in there. Automatically connected here. But go check those shirts out, and I can assure you, any shirt with that color goes to that cause. Um, Sexual abuse and sexual abuse is something that I advocate for.
Um, and I want to try to help someone if any way I can. So, where exactly is Kira today with everything? Well, she is now married to Joseph Chamberlain, and they have been married for 11 years. Together, they have two children, and make sure their names are kept as private as possible, which is something I completely understand. Um, the youngest is, at the time, the youngest is about 7, and the oldest is about 11, 10, so in that time frame. And today, Kara is a keynote speaker and a survivor. She is famous on social media and TikTok. Um, I also want y'all to know that I plan on doing an episode on Richard Evans later, just not right now because I really want to get through this mini series and I am in school at the moment. So, I've been trying to go work as hard as I can in school and at work so I can have time to do this as well. But you can also go check that merch shop out if you really want to help raise awareness for sexual assault, sexual abuse and assault. But what do y'all think of Kara's case? Could you have done what she have done? Like, would you have managed to remember all those little details? I am curious. Please let me know. Alright, guys. That is it for today's episode. The next episode on Isified will be the case of Elizabeth Smart. And I will see y'all next time on the True Crime Lounge.